Welcome to Talking Tuesday. I am your host, Fancy Quant, and today we are going to talk about building a personal brand here. So I know a lot of people talk about this, but we're going to talk about this in a nice, relaxed podcast setting here. What I mean by that is I'm not going to dive in and give you these 5 quick bullet points. What we're going to talk about is actually building a brand. I'm going to talk about the importances of it. I'm going to talk about how to build a brand, and then we're going to talk about some of the kind of attributes and things that we get from building the brand, and why it's important to separate your brand from your employers here. So to start off with, building a brand starts really in the office place. And I think this is where a lot of people are missing out. So networking, working with people, being honest, being trustworthy, doing good quality work, I think are things that are easy to say, but they're hard to do. And so some examples on this is, working in a workplace as well. It's not always popular to give the perspective of what's the truth or the reality. And I've had this happen quite a bit where it's like, I'll give you an example here. I work in model validation. So we are the bad guys. We're like the police officers of the modelers, the quants that build models here. So model development. They build out these models and then they send these models over. Our team validates them and says, yes, this looks amazing. It works exactly as you said. And then we go ahead and use the model. But the majority of the time, what ends up happening is you have a model, it gets submitted and we look at it and we go, oh, right, that's not looking good. That's a finding. So we issue findings. Like think about like a speeding ticket, right? Oh, you've got a finding. You got one speeding ticket. And then we keep working through this model and we're looking like at data and how they process it and how they clean it. And then you get into the aspects of like, oh, like statistically are all the assumptions met? And if they're not met, do they know they're not met? And how are they managing those risks? And then we go, oh, there's another finding. Oh, there's another finding. And sometimes the findings are so bad that you literally fail the model. Or more commonly, as I like to call it, it's, death by 1,000 cuts, meaning they have so many findings and so many issues with the model, all super small issues. But when you combine all those issues together, the model itself fails here. Now, it's really common for banks to be in a hurry and they say, okay, we need to hurry and pass this model because maybe it's a regulatory model. So it's used for CCAR as an example. And then they say, okay, it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter what it outputs. So we're either just going to overlay it and just come up with our own numbers out of thin air. We're going to draw a line on a sheet, or we're going to say, well, statistically, it's not the most robust model or machine learning model, and it's close enough and we're going to use it. And on those scenarios, right, I let management do their political dance and I let them, pass stupid stuff because that's what they do. And as a validator here, being honest, truthful, and fair, the best thing you can do in this situation and building a brand is to take notes and write in the final report, this model failed all these things. We tested all these things. However, it seems reasonable because it has low financial impact on the bank, or, we're mitigating this issue through what they call OPM or OMM. People call it different things. It's ongoing performance monitoring. So OPM. And they monitor the actual performance of the model. And often you can say, oh, this model fails this assumption and we expect it'll fail in this way. So therefore, we're going to monitor that. And as it starts to fail, we'll take action as required. So again, being honest, being fair, building your brand here, writing in these reports, I have been fairly unpopular and I've had managers have to re-edit my reports. But I don't leave out the nuanced details of why they failed, how they failed, and all of the analytical work that we did as a validation team to basically approve or reject that model. And if we have to approve it for political reasons or because it needs to get passed, we need to use the model. There's no other alternative available. We need to document that and do the honest and right thing. And often management doesn't like that because it makes us look bad. How dare you guys use this model and then you can't use the model and then the whole bank looks terrible because it's not looking stellar. But in general, building that brand and standing up to those scenarios where you need to is challenging. But again, for a lot of these, management has good justifications. Like, the model, has an impact of, say $100,000 or something, which is nothing for like say like a $50 billion bank. And so it's not really meaningful. So those are kind of ways you can pass it and you kind of let them slide and you deal with that. Now, there are other models where you have to stand up and do the grueling fights, which nobody likes to do. And that's like, okay, this model is a massively important model. It is required to do X, Y, and Z, but sometimes there is a lot of weight on this. Like maybe the Federal Reserve or whoever your regulators are has what they call an MRA or an MRIA, which is matter requiring attention or matters requiring immediate attention. This means like you're in trouble and you need to get this done And often when there's something like that out and development goes back and fixes, I'll put in air quotes here, or attempts to fix these models and they can't fix them, now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place where it's like, as a validator, you need to pass this model and say, yes, our bank closed this. And so we need to hurry and get it done and say, yeah, we did the right thing. We closed it out. Let's get rid of this MRA or MRIA. And once we get rid of that, then we're all in good standing. So you want to help your bank and you want to help your developers. But at the same token, right, if this model, which typically if you have an MRA or MRIA, these are really important models that are usually financially impactful. And so you also don't want to screw the bank and say, okay, yeah, let's use this model. It's not working stellar, but let's go ahead and use it. And then there's politics that kind of play into this. And what I mean by this, people say politics and they wave their hands. But when I say politics, what ends up happening is, some team lead who got this big, massive promotion, who shouldn't have got the promotion, but he knew a guy who knew a guy, and he got this great promotion. Now he's making double or something. Now he's the managing director of some development team. What ends up happening is then he says, oh, I can fix this problem. I'm so smart. I'm great. I'm wonderful. Oh, by the way, I'm not a quant. I have a business degree, but I trust I can fix this problem. And then what ends up happening is they can't fix the problem. And so then politics is the piece here now where it's like he's basically overpromised and underdelivered. And so now it's like, okay, if the person that helped get him promoted was on the validation team or is like an executive or something, now it's like, oh, I said that this person could do it and that person said they could do it and nothing happened. So politically, right, this is what politics is how do you save yourself, save your job, save your friends? And that's what ends up happening a lot of times, unfortunately, in a lot of banks, big and small, unfortunately. I mean, I would like to say it's one type of bank and I could like narrow down. It's every bank out there, unfortunately, for the most part. But anyways, so building that brand, being trustworthy, part of what I just mentioned too is delivering on your promises. So don't overpromise and then underdeliver. This just destroys your brand. You need to kind of set up that really strong person that can be counted on. So when you say something's going to get done, it's going to get done. So that's building the reputation at work. Also being honest. I've had this really odd scenario come up many, many times where somebody will ask me, Dimitri, what do you think of person X, Y, and Z? And I go, so first I need to know, what's the context? What do you mean? What do I think of these people? Like, is it in job performance? Is it as a person? Like, what is the context? If it's like, Dimitri, what do you think of this person as a person? I'm usually fairly honest. I'll lean towards like just the nicer side in general, which I think is just good politics here, but I won't lie. So if they say, what do you think of person ABC? And I go, oh, they're really nice. They have really interesting hobbies. They're fun to be with, like things that are true, but I'm not lying, but things that are true about them as a person. So you just kind of get those out of the way because I don't really like gossiping and chatting about people in general. Now, often there's going to be performance reviews or promotions, or someone's looking to hire somebody at a different firm and they know me and I know them. And so they're looking for a performance review here. Now, again, be honest. This is where, building this brand comes in. Being honest is a really, really hard part because often they'll say, what do you think of this person performance-wise? And I'll say, okay, well, I mean, I like them as a person. I like these attributes about them. I think they're a hard worker. However, and then you put in some realities and truths of, they're great, but they don't always deliver on time, for example. Whereas the other example we talked about, right? They overpromise and underdeliver. Or more specifically, it might be something like they're really technical. They can do the job really well, but they are a nightmare to work with. You guys, it's a hard fact. So, being honest with them or being honest about, this candidate is great and wonderful, but they're really good at this one type of job. So if you can pocket them into doing this type of job, I would recommend them, hands down, the greatest person ever. Just hire them for that. But if you're hiring for something different, a different skill set or a different area, you need to be honest, say they might not fit here. Now, this has come through in spades for me. I know people say, oh, Dimitri, you're so negative. And I can't believe, you would talk about people, but again, this is their brand, building their brand here. This is what helps build the brand as well, because let's say let's say somebody's hiring here. And when you go to hire and you say, okay, I know, so let's say person ABC knows Dimitri and they're hiring and they contact me and say, hey, what do you think of person ABC? If I lie and say, oh, this person's stellar, they're great, they're wonderful, best employee ever, you should hire them, and they hire them, then it burns my brand. It burns my bridge here, right? So you don't want to do that. You don't want to burn your brand or your bridges here by not being fully honest and forthright. Now, That being said, you also don't need to go out of your way just to trash people. This is horrible. This will destroy your brand as well. So again, walking that fine line of telling the truth when required to and when asked to do so versus like just going out of your way just to be mean and nasty to be mean and nasty. And I mean, I've had plenty of opportunities where I've left firms and I could easily go out and say, oh, this is true and this is true and this is true and they're a terrible corporation and this individual sucks. And let me tell you 15 stories on why I would never work with them again. And I could go through all that, but it doesn't do much for you, right? It doesn't do anything. Like I'm not getting any, brand building out of this. It makes me look terrible as a person as well. Like, why are you going out of your way to kind of tarnish other people's brands? Then it tacks onto your brand. Like, oh, it seems like you're just kind of, I don't know, catty or like you just don't like other people. And I'll tack this on too here kind of as a red flag with looking at brands and things. I've been in situations where I went to a firm in general and people were going on and on and on about, every person I talked to for some reason, when I asked them, how do you like this firm? They'd say, oh, this firm is great. It's wonderful. It's amazing. So I'm like, oh, awesome. This sounds like a great place to be. And then oddly enough, every single time they would mention, oh, I used to work at this other firm, which I had no connections with. Many of these, some of them I did. But the ones they started saying, oh, I hated this other company and I worked there and it was awful and the people are mean and nasty and the culture was terrible. And then they would go through like some of the firms I'd worked for, which I don't think they realized I'd worked for maybe, or maybe they just, I don't know, had their own delusional thing. But as they went out of their way and bashed these other companies and these other people and these other firms I worked for, I knew all those companies' brands. And during those time periods, I was there during those slots when they trashed these firms. I knew the individuals that they were going off on and saying, this person is, terrible and horrible and I hated working there. And they went on and on and on. And when they say this, right, again, this is building your brand here. You need to think about this. If these people on their own personal brands don't like these firms and their facts, I'll put air quotes, or facts or things that they state that they don't like about these firms, I think hard about it. And I think, okay, like you said, you didn't like, I don't know, the micromanagement, for example. And I go, okay, you worked for this person. I know that person. They did tend to be a little overbearing. So that's okay. Like I get it. We all have differences, and you move on. But that being said, when people start going off about like, oh, this company was really unethical and they screwed over this person and that person, they fired this person, for no reason, whatever. And I know all the inside information here, right? They're basically tarnishing their brands and their reputation here. And so those are important aspects here, I think, is kind of what we're talking about, is being honest, being truthful. These are all things that occur at work. And we're in a situation where what you say, what you do is going to follow you your entire career here. And so now how does this impact outward? So thinking about, okay, so Dimitri, I'm really nice. I'm following the advice here. I don't trash people for the sake of trashing people, but I'm honest about performance. I'm honest about people in general. And I try to be, warm and chipper and highlight the pros about people. But, cons can be mentioned as long as there's a necessity for it, right? Like I don't go out of my way just to say I don't like someone because I don't like them. But this plays the fact of how it kind of unfolds in reality is I've had multiple jobs where I've had people call me and say, Dimitri, this company called, this person called. And sometimes I find this out like years later. This isn't even like, no one calls and tells me typically like, oh, hey, they're looking at you. But they'll say, hey, this company called and they wanted to know your references. And I gave them this, and this, and this about you. I said, this is what you can do. This is what you can't do. I said, okay, great, perfect, thanks. And then I find out they went to that person and asked for more references. And so now all these references are kind of building here. So if you went through your career, with a big head, just trashing people and stuff, when you go to move companies, you go to get new positions, there's typically like all these referencing going on behind the scenes when you get to more senior levels. And people want to know, like, were you a really hard worker? Did you complain a lot? Are you great at managing people? Are you great on technical skills? Are you great in specific technical skills? Like, are you great with, Python or whatever? What is this person's strength? What is this person's weaknesses here? So these sorts of things have opened a lot of opportunities for myself just because I've done such a good job at trying to be nice and equal, but also trying to be fair and honest with people. So not trying to make the world look like, it's all just butterflies and rainbows and everyone's a winner, but also not having the perspective of everyone sucks and it's horrible. Even when I disagree with industries, for example, is looking for those highlights and trying to just be honest and give them a balanced perspective on what they're going to do here. So this will impact you. This will help you get jobs. This will help you get promotions. So monetarily wise, career wise, this is an amazing kind of tool to build a personal brand here. All right, so now the second piece here is going to be building a personal brand on social media. This is what a lot of people are going to be talking about. Building a brand on social media, I think, is extremely challenging for a variety of reasons. First, everyone says, okay, go out there and produce a bunch of content, be online constantly, chat on people's comments, give responses. And that's okay advice. But I like to point out quality over quantity. So having quality content that's really good material, something that makes you think, something that's really insightful or teaches you something, is excellent content to put out there. Same with comments. So somebody posts something, put some article out there, and you put an insightful comment on there, regardless if you agree or disagree with them, right? It could be a positive comment or a negative comment. But putting a comment that adds value is going to help build your brand online here. And unfortunately, I've come to the state that I really just hate LinkedIn. Like, I absolutely hate it. And yet I need it because I use it to all my content branding, right? I share my YouTube videos, the content I do make, I share it on LinkedIn because where else do quants go to find material? It's typically on LinkedIn. I think the advantage and the key here, so kind of the attributes here, is posting good quality content. And often I've talked to a lot of people on LinkedIn, answered a lot of questions. It's just a great way to kind of build relationships, ask questions, and make quality connections, I guess, in a way. And what I mean by this is I've had a few people where it's like, hey, you posted this thing. Would you like to come to an event? Come chat with us, come do this, come do that. And it's kind of turned into that piece of here where it's kind of, again, building those connections, building those brands. You might operate in one really niche area, such as myself. And then as you're posting more and more quality content, you'll be attracting people that are kind of overlap, but they're not really in your niche area. And it's a great way to kind of network and broaden yourself as well. So for me, this has resulted in speaking events. This just resulted in a lot of help with a lot of you out there that are subscribers. So I love LinkedIn for the fact of that I create the content, I create the branding, but I also give back to a lot of you. I just message a lot of you people. I'm looking at my screen here right now. People are asking me about how to improve their resumes, how to break into the industry, which graduate programs should they attend, those sorts of things. A lot of those are hard questions to answer, so I don't have like a really easy like cookie cutter template like do this, do that. But I look at their backgrounds, I help them out, provide them some content, and people always ask me, Dimitri, what are you getting out of this? I don't really get much out of it, guys. Like, I'm not getting paid for it. But again, it's building that brand. It's building that network. So I know when I help you guys out, and if I do a good job at helping you out, you're going to end up on your feet somewhere in another quant finance institution, or even maybe in a tech, fintech, tech, maybe marketing, maybe consulting, maybe somewhere else. I don't know. But you're going to end up going somewhere and building some sort of brand yourself. And having those contacts, having those connections and relationships are beneficial because they will give back to you in the sense of if you got a great brand, it helps you with, again, promotions, finding new jobs, for example, I found through, people I've known. I've got amazing speaking opportunities as well through creating content, somewhere on the YouTube channel site as well. If you want to create YouTube, which is a big, big ask. I think it's a lot of work to do it. But again, creating content, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, a podcast or whatnot, it brings in people of like minds. It helps you network. It helps build that brand. And that brings me to a third point here, which is going to be actually defining that brand here in transparency. So transparency is crucial here. So one big idea, which I've always talked about and I've always shocked managers and people in the industry, is I separate my brand from the companies I work at. And what do I mean by this? I don't think it means anything where I've worked. And people go, well, no, Dimitri, it means something. And it's like, well, maybe it means a little something. But realistically, right, I don't like going to conferences and they say, oh, here's Dimitri Bianco. He works at Bank XYZ. Because then people imply like I'm speaking on behalf of that bank. Now, when you create content on LinkedIn or on YouTube or anything else where you're trying to build out a brand in itself, and again, you don't have to build out a YouTube channel or anything like that. You can just have insightful responses on LinkedIn and interact with people in a nice casual networking type of way. Having your own brand provides you freedom to say and do what you want. But you have to remember something, and very great advice I received here from a lawyer friend of mine about, the freedom of speech, which is going to be, you have the freedom to say what you like, at least in the United States, but you also have to live with the consequences of what you say. So I can go out and say something about a firm and say they are excellent, or I could say they're terrible. Now, if that comes back to bite me, or that comes out to be, I don't know, a promotion or a new job offer or something, right? You have to live with those consequences. So that's something to really think about here on the transparency side. But for me, it provides this nice level of comfort of like, I feel like I'm a little on the edge here, right? I'm not the standard mid-pack guy that's just going along saying what everyone wants to hear. I'm saying things that are a little bit controversial. I'm teaching some technical topics here and there. But when companies go to see who is Dimitri Bianco, right? Who is this individual that we want to hire? I reference him and say, hey, look, I have a YouTube channel. Go check that out. I have a LinkedIn account. Go look at my LinkedIn. I have a podcast. Go listen to the podcast. I want them to really understand who I am and who they're getting. Now, again, as I mentioned, this can be a double-edged sword. If you say things that don't agree with them and those are touchy topics, they might not give you an offer. They might not hire you. They might not promote you. Again, though, thinking about this, I don't want to work somewhere where I feel like I'm silenced constantly. I don't want to work somewhere where I'm walking in eggshells. Again, we don't have to agree on everything. And I hope people are okay with that, right? I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. We come to some sort of conclusion here. But building this brand also provides that transparency of like, people look at it and they go, I know what I'm getting with Dimitri Bianco, right? I know, even if I don't know all his network contacts, right? I can't call somebody who used to, be his boss or whatever. It's easy for them to look online and say, this is what he believes. These are his technical skills. And this is a perfect opportunity to kind of build out this brand here. And to throw in something I thought was insightful, I was chatting with Peter Carr one day. So I've done some interviews with Peter Carr. And he mentioned in our discussion that we had, he goes, Dimitri, I think, YouTube might be that next frontier of like building a resume or a brand. And I thought that was really insightful. And I thought about that and I was like, he's right. Like, it's hard to really test someone in an interview on all of the technical skills. It's hard to test them on who they are as a person, their personality, those sorts of things with like a 1 hour slot of chatting. And I think that's why I love YouTubing and I love the podcast in itself. So thank you everyone for listening, who's a part of this, is building out that brand, building those opportunities, being independent, being unique. I think this is where I'm going to wrap this up here, is the uniqueness of who you are is what you should be selling, right? And I think a lot of people miss this when you put out a resume or you apply for a job, right? I can do risk management. I do A, B, C, D, E, just like everybody else. I can do statistics. I know logistic regression. Like, these are things that you need. I get that. I want to see that you can check the boxes and you have the bare minimums. But really, the colleagues I've loved to work with are the people that, one, are just really excited about, what we do. Like, I had a colleague, I would say quant finance. It's not quant finance that really excites him. It's statistics. Like, statistics is just like his big excitement, and specifically credit risk, doing those sorts of models. That's what excites him. We have fun and exciting conversations. And two is the personality piece here, right? I want to hire someone that I just absolutely love chatting with and working with. And no, I don't have fairy tale dreams about, like, oh, there's the perfect candidate and whatever. I've had disagreements with colleagues. I've had, I would call like relationship fights with colleagues on like, I am mad you did X, Y, and Z. I feel like you screwed me. And they say, well, Dimitri, I'm mad at you because I feel like you didn't do the right thing here. And then we have some sort of discussion and we come to a conclusion and we all move on like adults. But having that branding, creating these brands, guys, being someone eccentric, being someone excited, showing your interests, showing your hobbies, I think this is what's really unique about building a brand. I think this is where a lot of people struggle as well, because we often feel like we are pigeonholed into this corporate mold, and I have felt somewhat shackled and chained down into the banking, quant finance mold here for long enough. I'm going to be breaking free soon. But being who you are, being excited, being unique, selling your brand. And I think doing that is not something as easy as like putting up a billboard and saying, this is who I am. Like, I still struggle to say, what does Dimitri Bianco stand for? I don't know, guys. I'm a quant. I like quant stuff. I do math and stats. I like being on YouTube and chatting. I mean, it's hard to nail that down. Like, I'm not a marketing professional. I do stats for a living. But I think being able to be on YouTube and have a personality and show people I like other things besides, quant finance. Like, I have a whole other YouTube channel that's on Bianco Land, which is the place I live. And it's on beekeeping and fixing cars and gardening and all kinds of random topics. And just being someone exciting, being someone that's really authentic and new. I think that's what people are really looking for in a brand. So Building a brand, tips and advice on this. Just start with LinkedIn if you want to build a career brand here. I think this is the easiest way to do this, the most meaningful way to do this, right? You don't need to go out and spend all this time creating content. And especially when you create bad content, it backfires on you as well. Like when people create bad content and it's wrong, like for me, that degrades your brand. But again, just being involved in groups, having good comments, having great questions. So on LinkedIn, if you're a student and you're building a brand, ask questions. Like you might think it's, oh, this is going to be a really dumb question. Ask the question. You'll be shocked at how many times people like me are like, oh, I'm so excited to talk about this. Somebody asked me about, I don't know, ADF testing, and I'm going to dive all in as I'm like on the keyboard, chatting away. And sometimes I even set up calls. I'm like, oh, let me explain this in, over a Zoom call. So anyways, build your brands, really put in the time to build quality over quantity. You don't need to build a lot. Build those relationships in person as well though. So LinkedIn's a great place to start, as I mentioned. Being honest, being fair, being straightforward with people is going to take you the furthest in building a brand. People want to trust the brand. That's the biggest piece I think with a brand is trust. They feel like they can trust you. A lot of the other pieces are going to fall into place. But again, it takes years and years and years to build out a brand. But anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And as always, until next time.